a Kangaroo Fern production.
Today, I'm filing applications for warrants of arrest before Pretrial Chamber 1 of the International Criminal Court in the situation in the State of Palestine. These applications are the outcome of independent investigations conducted by my office under the direction of the two principal trial lawyers standing behind me today, Brenda J. Hollis, who, in addition to leading our work in the situation in Ukraine for the past couple of years, has since January also taken over leadership of the Palestine investigation, and Andrew Cayley, King's Counsel, who more recently joined the office and will be leading our work on the situation in the State of Palestine going forward.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another episode of Freeman Podcast Chronicle under Evening Post AU. On today's episode, we're talking about the recent arrest warrant from ICC for the Hamas and Israel official. And today's episode, we're talking to Dr. Juliet McIntyre, has been a lecturer in law and UniSA since 2016. And she completed her PhD degree at the University of Melbourne under the supervision of Judge Hilary Charlesworth of the International Court of Justice and Professor Margaret Young. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Juliet McIntyre. How are you today, Dr.
Very
Juliet?
well. Very well. Thank you for having me.
What is your first reaction when the chief prosecutor of ICC asked for arrest warrant for Israel official, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Prime Minister and also the Hamas leader as well?
My first reaction was that this has been expected for some time. Obviously, we've all seen the events in Gaza continue to deteriorate. And even though we can't know for certain just by watching, things that we might see on social media or news reports that war crimes have been committed, the situation seemed sufficiently serious that we were suspecting that some kind of application for an arrest warrant may be coming, but of course we couldn't speculate necessarily on exactly what crimes they may be charged with. So now the Office of the Prosecutor has obviously studied all of the evidence and reached a conclusion on which war crimes against humanity they consider may have been committed.
Thank you so much. In Australia, so Prime Minister Anthony Albanese doesn't want to comment about the ICC procedure. But the opposition leader, Peter Dutton, said Australia need to stand up about this. And in the US, US President Biden said it's not acceptable about the arrest warrant. But if you can see on a previous year, when the ICC hand over an arrest warrant to Russian President Vladimir Putin because of the Ukraine war, US President Biden is uphold about that. So it's contradicting.
Yes, it is. At the end of the day, to take Australia for starters, Australia is a party to the Rome Statute that establishes the International Criminal Court. So we're under an obligation, a legal obligation, to assist the court in its investigations and uphold the institution. So while I appreciate that Prime Minister Albanese has said, I'm not going to comment on ongoing court proceedings, and that may be the way his office wants to take it, really we're actually under an obligation to be sort of more positive about this, if you will. Whereas the approach taken by President Biden in the US to condemn these arrest warrants is really quite shocking. The US is different because they're not a party to the Rome Statute. They don't have any legal obligations in respect of the ICC. So look, they can kind of say what they want. But you're right, it is very contradictory because we've seen that when it comes to, say, Vladimir Putin, everyone's happy to see an arrest warrant issued there. And when it comes to the leaders of Hamas, who have also just had an application for arrest warrants put forward in respect of them, I don't think anybody's complaining about that. And what we need to understand is that institutions like the International Criminal Court exist to uphold legal standards that apply to everybody around the world. So war crimes and crimes against humanity can be committed by anybody. There's no free pass here when it comes to conduct. And what the prosecutor has done is assess against that legal standard and found them wanting.
Thank you for that. How does the ICC jurisdiction work in relation to the Gaza war, considering that the Palestinian Authority have accepted the court jurisdiction, even though Israel is not a signatory to that?
So we have to go back in time a little bit to sort of understand how this all works. So Palestine was recognised as a non-member observer state of the United Nations back in 2012. And then it was able to become a state party to the Rome Statute back in 2015. So since that time, there have been a number of different referrals about the situation in Palestine to the ICC. So Palestine referred itself back in 2018. The Office of the Prosecutor opened an official investigation in 2019. So they've been investigating the situation for quite some time. And then once the current conflict sort of kicked off, we had a number of referrals from other states parties. So, South Africa, Bangladesh, I think Mexico. So a few different states who are members of the ICC also submitted referrals basically saying to the prosecutor, look, you need to investigate this situation. So given that the overall investigation was opened in 2019, it was actually back in 2021 that the prosecutor said, look, not the prosecutor, the court actually said, we agree that there is territorial jurisdiction over the territories occupied by Israel since 1967. So you've got a situation where any number of states have asked for the court to investigate this situation. Palestine is a state party to the Rome Statute. And then what happens next is this question about Israel. Does the court have jurisdiction over Israel? Well, yes, sort of. It doesn't have jurisdiction over the territory of Israel. But what it does have is jurisdiction over persons who have committed crimes in the territory of Palestine. So to the extent that Netanyahu or Gallant or anyone else, any other Israeli official, has been involved in the commission of war crimes or crimes against humanity in the territory of Gaza, then the court is going to have jurisdiction over them. It also operates for nationals of states parties, so Palestinians who may have committed war crimes or crimes against humanity elsewhere, including in Israel. Their jurisdiction is based on their nationality. So because they're a Palestinian person, Palestine has acceded to the Rome Statute, the court has jurisdiction there. So there's two ways, basically, in the territory or via nationality. So either way, they're covered.
So it's a little bit complex of the situation because of that. So can you explain to us what is the role of the panel of international legal expert involved in this case? How significant in their expertise in shaping the legal argument and proceeding?
Look, the Office of the Prosecutor is the main player here. So that office will have done all of the work gathering evidence and assessing the quality of that evidence. This panel of experts is an unusual step taken by the prosecutor, but I think given the obvious, political rhetoric that surrounds this investigation, they've done this in order to really prove that it's not just that the Office of the Prosecutor believes that there's a case to be answered here, but that this panel of independent experts also believe that to be the case. And the experts come from a very wide range of political backgrounds as well. You've got Tory appointees from the UK. You've got Theodore Meron, who is an Israeli-American Holocaust survivor. You've obviously got renowned human rights barristers from all different backgrounds. So I think what the Office of the Prosecutor might be trying to do here is say, look, this is not in any way a politically driven application for arrest warrants here. These are genuine crimes that we believe have been committed and that people should have to answer for.
Thank you for that. What will be the impact? What impact could be the issuance of the issue of the arrest warrant have on Israel Palestinian conflict and regional stability?
Look, the arrest warrants aren't going to have, assuming arrest warrants are granted, of course, arrest warrants aren't going to have any immediate impact on the ground when it comes to the war in Gaza. The parties aren't going to immediately stop fighting because these arrest warrants have been issued. Things that may happen, for example, one is that if arrest warrants are issued in respect of Netanyahu, it's very difficult for other states to continue to back his conduct without at least thinking twice about, whether that's going to reflect poorly on them. When you have a warrant out for your arrest for the commission of crimes against humanity, it's pretty questionable to sort of stand next to that person and say, hey, yeah, I fully support them no matter what. I think it will reflect a change in the attitudes of states external to Israel and how much they're willing to continue to support Israel, for example, by supplying arms to Israel. But yeah, as I said, it's not going to have any immediate impact. Some have said that it might negatively influence the negotiations for peace, but given that applications are out for arrest warrants for both Hamas and Israeli leaders, I don't sort of see how that necessarily plays out. This is not an unbalanced approach here. The situation in terms of finding a peaceful solution, a two-state solution, that hasn't changed.
Thank you so much for that. So what's going to be the situation or the impact for different countries and international actors in response to this development?
So there's 124 states parties to the Rome Statute, and those state parties, if arrest warrants are issued, are then under an obligation to arrest the suspects if they come onto their territory and deliver them to The Hague for trial. So it creates a situation where, say, Netanyahu as a head of state is unable to travel to these countries. It doesn't seem like much, perhaps, necessarily, that his world will shrink, but it's pretty substantial. And of course, we do see the risk of his being arrested should he choose to travel to one of these locations. In terms of other flow-on obligations, though, there isn't really anything else for third-party states to do. It's up to them how they want to assess their relationship with anyone with an arrest warrant over their head in terms of, as I said, supplying arms or offering other forms of support.
What do you think what challenges might arise during the process of, say, deciding whether to issue the arrest warrant for these officials?
Yeah, so the process at this point is it's going to go to the court, and a pre-trial chamber of the court, and that pre-trial chamber is going to assess whether there are reasonable grounds to believe that the persons who are subject of the application for an arrest warrant have indeed committed crimes that fall within the jurisdiction of the court. This can take a few months. I mean, for Putin, it only took about 1 month, but it can take quite some time. In this case, I think, given that we've seen not only external kind of oversight of this process, but obviously the Office of the Prosecutor will have put a huge amount of effort into ensuring that the evidence is really tight here. I suspect that we'll see warrants issued, but it's not always the case. There have been instances previously where warrants have been denied to the prosecutor. The prosecutor can appeal if the court decides to deny the arrest warrants. So we sort of have to sit and wait and see what happens here. But that's the standard that the court will apply. It's a reasonably low standard, obviously, because at this point we're not having a full trial. We're not testing all of that evidence. So I think it's likely that we'll see arrest warrants issued, but we have to wait and see.
Are there any controversies surrounding the ICC action in this case?
Well, there's a lot of generated controversies, but there's no real genuine controversies, let's put it that way. So there's a lot of outrage about the fact that the prosecutor announced the Israeli application and the Hamas application at the same time. People are saying this creates some kind of moral equivalency between the two, and that's very offensive, for example. So that is a real red herring, actually. It's completely practical to announce the arrest warrant or the application in respect of the situation in Palestine, right? Because that's what the prosecutor is investigating. They're not just investigating Hamas or just investigating Israel. They're investigating the whole situation. So A, it's very logical. But B, as I said at the start, the prosecutor isn't interested in who's on what side. The prosecutor is interested in what is the legal standard here for crimes against humanity? What is the legal standard for war crimes? And has that threshold been crossed? It doesn't matter what side of the conflict you're on. The same rules apply to everybody. So that's one kind of manufactured controversy. The other one, of course, in a way slightly more serious, is some of the attacks on the independence of the prosecutor, especially those coming out of the US, where a number of senators in the US signed a letter sort of threatening the prosecutor were they to do anything in respect of Israel. Obviously, these are threats against the prosecutor's independence, but the prosecutor has, I guess you would say, stood up to those and said, well, look, you can threaten me all you like, I'm still going to do my job. So I think this is, a positive step for those who want to see accountability for war crimes and other crimes against humanity that are committed anywhere in the world, really. The prosecutor has said, look, it doesn't matter if you threaten me, I'm going to investigate situations impartially, gather evidence as best as I can, and proceed on that basis.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So my last question to you, Dr. McIntyre, is that how does the situation with Israel official compare to other cases where the ICC has investigated and prosecuted crimes committed during an armed conflict?
It's hard to really compare any case with any other case because a lot of it comes down to what evidence is available and what the prosecutor can verify as being actions which are attributable to the person that they're looking to prosecute. It's really sort of hard to say, this is how it always plays out, or this is what the court will be applying the same evidentiary standards, but we sort of have to wait and see. I know that's not a very satisfying answer for your listeners, but you really can't compare one case with another. It's all about how much evidence can the prosecutor gather, how much of that evidence is going to survive through the defence, and what the court makes of it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juliet McIntyre from University of South Australia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is another episode of the Freeman Chronicle podcast under Evening Post AU. And see you again for next week. And this is Miko Santos. Thank you.